Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Raising the Curtain, a Bloomington Normal Theater podcast with Ashleigh Raylan. Today, we are interviewing director Aaron Sparks, who is directing the upcoming production of Every Brilliant Thing at Heartland Theatre Company. How are you, Aaron?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Aaron and I
Excellent.
are having some fun here. We are trying some stuff over Zoom today for the first time due to this crazy weather we've been having, but I think it'll be a good time. And we are going to tell you all about this awesome upcoming production that is a one-person show, which I'm very excited to come and see. I think it'll be great. But kind of before we delve into the show, Aaron, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I grew up in St. Louis, so not too far away from here, and ended up in New York. Got my undergraduate degree at NYU, so I have my BFA from the School of the Arts at NYU. Was in New York for a long time, about 17 years, doing some directing, doing some acting, all that good stuff. Uh, Ended up in Texas, where I got my MFA in directing from Texas State University and am now in Greensboro, North Carolina. At least that's where I'm based, and teaching some courses in the theater department in the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, which I'm even doing some of that over Zoom while I'm here in Illinois.
So, how did you find your way to Heartland?
So I have all sorts of sort of connections both to Bloomington Normal and to Heartland as well. So all sorts of concentric circles around my life have sort of led in and around Bloomington Normal. So my sort of largest one is that my wife, Natalie Blackman, has her MFA in acting from ISU, from Illinois State. So from 2013 to 2015, I was in and around uh, the Twin Cities quite a lot, probably about once a month. So had my go-to restaurants and had all that stuff. So I was here quite a lot. Um, and in that time, Natalie and I got married, and that was in the spring of 2015. And in the fall of 2015, she said, "Well, look, you know, you have some time. Why don't you be in Bloomington Normal with me for a little while?" And while that happened, it happened to coincide with a the production calendar at Heartland, and so I acted in a production of Tribes, directed by Sandy Zielinski in
Yeah.
2015, which was a really wonderful experience, a really wonderful ensemble of people with some of the people who I know that you know, Connie and Kristen and all those wonderful folks. Um, so that so that was my initial connection to Heartland, and a good connection to Bloomington Normal, but also a very good friend of mine grew up in Bloomington Normal, and in fact, uh, his dad taught history at Illinois State, and the woman who was the head of the theater department when I started at Texas State, Deb Alley, taught at Illinois State, was the head of the directing program here before she was at Texas State. So I have all sorts of concentric circles around here. And last year, when they were put out the call looking for directors, I decided to throw my hat in the ring. A very good friend of mine from Texas, actually, my friend Liz Fisher, had who also went to the graduate program at Texas State, had directed here. And I said, you know what, let's throw my hat in the ring. And I talked to Reese, and I was interested in working on Every Brilliant Thing, and they're interested in having me do it. And here we are.
Awesome. What drew you to this show?
There are two, I think, principal things that really drew me to Every Brilliant Thing. The first is, I think it deals in a really good way to the idea of talking about mental illness, and specifically dealing with serious mental illness as it affects someone's family. And that's a really personal thing to me, as it is, I know, to a lot of people. Everyone is probably one degree of separation from somebody who deals with mental illness in some way. For me, my father-in-law uh, has a serious mental illness. And so, especially the story of a child dealing with their parents uh, mental illness was both personal to me, and I felt like they dealt with it in a really honest way that doesn't sugarcoat the experience of it, that shows you what it's like, warts and all, but also is ultimately really hopeful. The play is really has lots of humor in it and is ultimately really, really life affirming. So with that and talking about mental illness, which we have gotten so much better about in the last several years, but
Absolutely.
still have a long way to go to removing the stigma and having these conversations. So I thought that was really great. The other thing that really attracted me to the play was this particular sort of style of one person show. It is a really interactive um, theater piece. I don't want to give too much away. Some of it
Sure.
is really special in sort of experiencing it firsthand, but there is a lot of interaction with the audience, and the audience plays a very crucial role in the storytelling of the play itself. It is, I will say that it is a one person show. The great Tim Wyman, who is the actor in the show, who you've seen on the Heartland, folks have seen on the
Oh,
Heartland
absolutely.
stage many times over the years. Um, but it also, but he's not the only character, and so and that there are many ways in which the audience sort of gets involved in a way that is very welcoming. And sometimes you hear the idea of like, oh, there's going to be involvement with the audience, uh, and it can be a little bit anxiety inducing. But this is handled in such a really lovely and exciting way that it is a really welcoming way to engage with the audience, and that's really exciting to me as well.
Excellent. So I'm curious about the audition process for this show. A lot of times, with plays, it's, sides and cold readings, monologues. What was your audition process like for this show?
So not too far away from the typical audition process. It was We did have sides. There were two aspects that we really needed to address with the sides, though, some of which sort of slightly different than you might find in a typical audition. So there is a lot of material that involves sort of the actor, and we had to make sure that we found an actor who could carry both the humor and the dramatic heft of the story. And so we picked a side that was sort of more a monologue that kind of covered the range of that experience. The other aspect is we had to have somebody who was capable and had the facilities to deal with the audience in an organic way because there is so much interaction. And so one of the sides really dealt with that interactive component. Of course, there is a set script here, but by its nature and with the engagement with the audience, there's a bit that's going to be different every night. There is a bit of improvisation that is involved uh, in the script as well. So, of course, when you go to the theater, every night is different. You come and you're going to see a slightly different show, but that is definitely going to be the case here. If someone came, and I would invite everyone to please do it, you really would see a show that has some distinct variations depending on the company, and the audience is included in that. Um, so that's really exciting. So we had to sort of figure that out in the audition process as well. And I have to say that, coming into these auditions, when you're doing a solo show, it's a little bit nerve-wracking when you don't know ahead of time who you're going to be working with, and that person has to
Yeah.
carry the show. And really, we ended up lucking out. We got a lot of really great people who came out to audition, and Tim really checked both boxes in terms of being able to carry the show, and also really has a good facility with these sort of interactive portions of what is asked as well.
So what has your kind of rehearsal been like with working with Tim?
So we are, it is a standard rehearsal process, but there are aspects because of that sort of the aspects that are interactive. that are slightly different than a typical rehearsal process. In that, uh, Linda Reddick, who's also a familiar name to
Yeah.
folks around the Bloomington Normal Theater community, Linda is assistant directing and has been essential in of course you know, offering her viewpoint and being a sounding board for me, but also um, taking the role of all of these various people in the audience as we are interacting. The other aspect that we've just really started to do, have done a little bit, and will continue to do throughout the rest of the rehearsal process as we get closer to the show, is we've been inviting folks to rehearsals, so that we can actually rehearse those aspects of the play, the interactive aspect of the play as well. So we are bringing in outside folks, some of the folks who have affiliations with Heartland and with other people involved in the show and in the company, who have come and have really provided a vital service for us as we explore the play.
Gail was nice enough to send me the press release. So I'm actually going to read the little synopsis that's in the press release here because I think it's really interesting. So it says ice cream, kung fu movies, burning things, laughing so hard you shoot milk out of your nose. So begins a young child's list of every brilliant thing in life, a list composed as a way of coping with their mother's struggle with depression and mental illness. A one person theatrical tour de force that invites the audience to participate in the storytelling and sharing the experience of being human. It does say mature audiences, descriptions of depression, self harm, and suicide. It, that is such an interesting way to describe a play. So I'm just curious, just based off of that, without giving too much away, do you have a favorite moment in the show that you either really enjoy watching or that you're really excited for audiences to see?
There there are a number of moments that I'm really excited for the audience to see. As I mentioned before, we give that content warning, which is absolutely necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I want to, make it clear that this really is like there is, even though it deals with this serious topic, deals with mental illness, deals with suicidal ideation, uh, depression, things like that, that there is so much warmth and so much humor in this play, talking about every brilliant thing. It is about the things that exploring those things that make life, you know, wonderful and enjoyable, and sort of help get us through those challenging times. Uh, it's hard for me to sort of zero in on
Mm-hmm.
uh one particular moment. There's a lot that I really love in the play. It's really Duncan McMillan, and Johnny Donahoe, who put together this script, have really done a good job in sort of, building this mousetrap, of the play, um, in a in a really exciting and engaging way. One of the things that, just on a personal level, that I find really exciting in the theater is things that engage the audience's imagination. Uh, I think that, and this is not my idea originally, but I really believe that we talk about, the role of actors and designers and the director and everyone who works on the show. And I really do believe that the creative act of the theater is really completed by the audience being there, and not just the audience being there, but the audience engaging their imaginations. That is, I think, the kind of completion of the creative act of theater. And this play offers a lot of really great instances, for that. It is innately theatrical. It is a play. Although they did film this, a version of this that I think that folks can find. I think it was on HBO, maybe at some point.
Oh,
But
okay.
there is something about this that is so innately theatrical, that capturing it and experiencing it with an audience is so special. The communal experience, and I think this play really is a communal experience, talking about every brilliant thing. Uh, there is, as you know, as referenced in the press release, we there is a list of brilliant things compiled throughout uh, that get compiled throughout the play, and they are, range from things like ice cream specific to very specific things, especially as the list goes on and the list grows, and that growing list is an ongoing thing that happens in the play, and it's really exciting and fun to engage with.
Have you ever directed a show like this or even like a one-person show before?
Interestingly enough, I have directed a one person show before, and one actually dealing with mental illness, although very different in sort of tone and feel than Every Brilliant Thing. So uh, Natalie Blackman, my wife who trained at Illinois State, she developed a solo play called Disorder, which actually began its life in development actually here at Illinois State.
Oh, cool.
And then we continued to develop it, and we did it at the United Solo Festival in New York, which is the largest solo theater festival in the world. We did it a couple other times in New York, including for psychology and psychiatric residents at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York at some point. And that is a play that deals with her experience, sort of navigating the mental health system in dealing uh, with her own dad. Um, and so there are sort of thematic sort of overlaps here, but a very sort of different in tone and in feel. But a solo piece is its own sort of animal. It is a different sort of thing to have the experience of someone talking directly to you, which generally happens in a solo theater piece. We are talking to the audience directly, what they call direct address. And so how do we engage that? Even in a show that is not quite as interactive as Every Brilliant Thing is, the audience is always the scene partner in
Hmm.
that instance. So so that's sort of, I think, the secret sauce that sometimes can be missing when people put on solo theater pieces, which can be really dynamic and theatrical. And I think something like Every Brilliant Thing really expands the idea of what a solo theater piece can be, and sort of pushes the boundaries of that.
I'm curious because Heartland has a very intimate space. Their stage is very up close and personal with the audience, and it seems like that is really needed to make this show a success. I'm curious though, how do you think this show would be viewed if it was done at a bigger theater, like, traditional proscenium or, triple the amount of seats or something like that?
I think it would be a challenge. I mean, part of the intimacy of the space of Heartland is really advantageous to a piece of this nature, like Every Brilliant Thing. It would be challenging, and in fact, it is suggested in the script that it, potentially to do it in the round, although we are sort of keeping the standard thrust configuration at Heartland, and
Sure.
we're close enough that we can really have all that interaction still. But I, this is not really a play that's meant for a large proscenium space, and I think you would have to almost, as a number of shows have done over the years, you would almost have to put some seating on the stage because there has to be quite a lot of interactions.
Hmm.
You would have to reconfigure the theater. The actor being far away in a very large proscenium space just wouldn't fit with how the mechanics of Every Brilliant Thing. So yeah, no, that would be really challenging, and you'd have to sort of figure out how to sort of tackle those challenges if you were to explore it in a large space.
Gotcha. That's great to know. And especially if the script alludes itself to doing it in the round. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, shows are always interpreted, I think, so much differently, especially when you can really bring someone into the story and become that second actor that the audience can
Mhm.
become. But I am very excited to see this show. It's something that I don't think I've ever really seen before. And I see a lot of shows.
Yeah, I think this it's really exciting. I mean, I really do think this is a really beautiful, life-affirming, funny, touching play. And even if you've seen one person shows before, this is not probably not like almost any one person show that you've seen. It's a new, it is a new thing to explore uh, for the audiences at Heartland, and that's something that I've talked about with Reese Lovell, the artistic director of
Hmm.
Heartland, that they have done solo theater pieces before, but never one quite like Every Brilliant Thing. So it's really exciting to bring this to the audience, and even if some of these things give you pause, if the subject matter gives you pause, or even the idea of having to engage with with the actor involved here gives you pause, I can tell you that it is a really special kind of, and I think will be a really magical experience to be a part of and to be in the audience and to share that experience with a group of people. And I don't know when the next time they'll do, even in the Bloomington Normal community, when there'll be a play quite like this. So it's a really great
Right.
opportunity to experience something that maybe you haven't experienced in the theater before.
Yeah, we always love to see new things, and Heartland does a really good job of bringing in those, plays that people haven't heard of and showing them something different and kind of breaking the word theater out of this mold that we can constrict it to sometimes. So I think that's amazing that they are doing this, and that I also think it's great that they were able to give you an opportunity to come here and do this, especially since you do have some ties to the community. So we got to make sure we plug the dates here. So Every Brilliant Thing opens with a pay what you can preview on Thursday, February 1st. And then it looks like it will run February 2nd and 3rd, 8th, 9th, 10th, 15th, 16th, and 17th at 7:30. And then matinees on Sunday, February 11th and on yes, matinee on Sunday, February 11th. And then I am showing here there's discussion following the matinee. What is that discussion going to kind of consist of?
So the discussion is actually going to involve some folks who are actually mental health professionals or in
Oh,
that
excellent.
field, talking about some of the issues and experiences raised by the play. And that was something that that Risa and I talked about as an idea and something that we really wanted to touch upon in these talkbacks. Um, to talk through that, I mean, this is a really obviously the theater is a shared experience, but people dealing with mental health challenges, either with for themselves or with family members, friends, loved ones, is a really universal experience, but one that we often don't talk about. So
Hmm.
I think, especially after an experience like Every Brilliant Thing, um, it gives us an opportunity to have that conversation, to potentially share our experiences, to ask questions about how do we find resources, how do we find support when we are in the midst of this. I know um, one of the things, and we talk about this in the show, is organizations like NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, an organization that helps both people dealing with mental illness themselves and their families, um, and a really excellent community resource. And then they do have a local chapter here in Bloomington Normal. So organizations like that and resources for people, because it can feel like that you are alone and that no one has ever experienced these challenges when
Hmm.
you're in the midst of, if someone is in the midst of a crisis. But there are people who have dealt with this, as challenging as it is, who can offer you just an ear or a shoulder, but also advice, and how
Right.
to navigate what can be a very complicated system, and how to be able to move forward in a healthy, happy, and productive way.
Yeah. One thing that seems kind of very intriguing to me as someone who can relate to the mental illness field, um, it's almost even in today's world, we have gotten better, like you mentioned, but it's still a subject I feel like a lot of people shy away from. And to bring it onto a stage, I think it's a safe space for people to talk. And the way this is being described is, I don't want to call it like a light at the end of the tunnel, but it's almost putting like a happier context around mental health and that it's okay to talk about it. And we
It is
should, I
okay.
think.
Absolutely. And it is talking about people who it's about living with these things. It is not about these things being the end. And I just wanted, I could talked about this many times, but I do think it is your point is important in that this is does show, I guess you could use the phrase a light at the end of the tunnel. It does show living through this, and it
Hmm.
does show how we survive, how we grow in a way um that is really life affirming. That even that even in things that are dark, there is humor and there is joy. That things are not all one thing. It's not all bad. It's not all bad, and it's not all bad experiences. There are good experiences. There's humor. There's laughter, and there is joy in sort of making our way through this process. And I think this show really accomplishes that. And it talks about this, as I said, in a way um, that doesn't view it through rose-colored glasses. It's quite
Right.
realistic about the circumstances, but it is really, I've used this phrase multiple times now, but it is really life affirming and
Hmm.
really, and I think it will leave folks feeling good about the world and their journey. It's not gonna. There are some plays that talk about mental illness in a way that are great stories that kind of leave you, maybe not as hopeful. It'll leave you feeling a
Hmm.
little bummed out, and that's great. That's okay. That's great. There's space for that type of theater, um, and for that type of storytelling. But this really accomplishes talking about this in a way that does leave us with feelings of hope and possibilities moving forward.
Yeah, I've mentioned this on previous podcasts with other people, but when we talk about subjects like that, we don't always have to focus on the negative. And I think the same thing can go for like shows that focus on race and diversity. It doesn't always have to be about the oppression and the struggle. There's there's happiness too. So I think it's really great that you're able to do this with mental health. So, all
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
So
I fully agree.
yeah. So, Aaron, I think we've kind of, I think we can kind of guess what your next answer might be, but I'm curious if you could kind of put into words for us, like why you do theater. Like, what is your kind of personal mission as to why you do what you do?
I think there's something really powerful about being in a room together and telling stories, about having a communal experience. There is less communal experiences as our life has become fractured. We each have our own experiences. One of the great things about sort of the opening of life and sort of resources online is that we can find our own uh, personal niche and we can find our own personal communities. But the downside is that we lose we can lose some shared experience with sort of the greater community. And there is nothing like being in a room with people. There's a study that happened several years ago about people in the theater, and they found that people sitting in a theater watching a play, watching a musical, that their heartbeats sync up. There is something about being in a physical space with each other. And that's a really powerful experience, and telling stories in that way. Um, there's nothing else like it. I love movies. I love TV. I love all of this stuff. But to me, there is nothing that quite creates the electricity. There is actually like the physical experience of being in a room with people and
Yes.
sharing in a story. Um, and theater tells us really important stories. It talks about things like mental health. It talks about things that maybe we can't talk about otherwise. It deals with things that are uncomfortable, but in a way that allows us to experience it. And that can be very, um, sometimes that can be in a way that feels very cathartic. Sometimes that is in a way that sort of spurs us to go out and do things. And theater has the potential to do all of those things. Um, and each night that you are in a theater, you are having an experience that only the people in that room share.
Hmm.
And that's really special. And to be a part of that and to be a part of that storytelling, I think is just, it's really cool. I've loved it since I was a kid and I continue to love it.
I absolutely agree. We should get coffee. We have kind of the same
Yeah.
mindset on it. So okay, excellent, Aaron. Anything else you'd like to add about the show before I let you go?
Everybody come see it. Starting February 1st. Come see the show. This is a really special theatrical experience.
Hmm.
Uh, and I encourage everybody in the community, see it more than once. It will be different if you see it again. It's it's just it's a unique theatrical experience, um, that that really is, it's a special experience, and I think and every brilliant thing, just a really lovely play, and Tim is giving it, an incredible performance. Um, and you will be giving, if you share in the in seeing the play, you will become a part of that. And I hope that people do.
Excellent. So, all right, thank you so much, Aaron. Everybody go see Every Brilliant Thing opening February 1st at Heartland Theatre Company, directed by Aaron Sparks, starring local actor Tim Wyman. And then make sure to attend the Sunday, February 11th matinee performance for the discussion. That's probably when I'm going to go because I'm interested to hear about that. But tickets can be purchased through Heartland's website or by emailing box office at heartlandtheater.org. Thank you so much, Aaron. It has been a privilege to talk to you, and I can't wait to come see the show.
Great to talk to you, Ashley. Thank you so much.